Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 6 of Leverage Redemption. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, the way this episode started, kind of, what the case involved was basically a guy who basically bought a pharmaceutical company. Like, his company comes and swoops in and buys up companies that are kind of like on the rough end, and he buys them up and then jacks up their prices. In this particular case, he ended up buying a pharmaceutical company, and there's a medicine that cures it's a medicine for a particular illness, and it's the whole, sadly, the downside to the pharmaceutical big pharma, as people would say. It's just like, a cure is a one-time deal, whereas, treatments you pay month and month. And because of the price gouging, Michael, he can't afford getting his daughter Jenna's medication because it's going up like 100% or whatever. It's like, so buying the medication and insurance, like, he couldn't pay for both, especially because he got laid off. So... And immediately Sophie's reaction upon this, especially hearing Michael saying, for him, what worries him the most is, because of this, Jenna, as well as kids like her, could die. And the moment you saw Sophie's reaction to me, they've been in a situation where obviously there's been rich and powerful people who've taken advantage of and put, young people in a very bad situation, but you can immediately draw parallels to Sam's situation, Nate's son, and they end up, bringing it up later. That's why this case was so personal, because if Nate was here, he would be taking it personally. And because it's also it's not only what this type of stuff does to the children who suffer and die from this, but it's also the aftermath of what it does to parents. Because of what happened to Sam, it turned Nate into who he was. He drowned in his own sorrow. He spent so many years just hating himself because of it. And it's part of the reason why he burned so much, as Sophie kind of described it, sadly. So it's who knows what his life would have been, but it's also the tragedies ended up leading to him becoming the crusader that he was, taking upon these crusades, and ended up having this team that he has, this family that he had. So I'm not trying to say it just, the way life works, there's bad stuff and there's also good stuff. Even good can come from some bad. Because initially their plan was to, as they say, kind of sell Jim the Brooklyn Bridge, because essentially initially they were just trying to find out something personal about him, and eventually it was right, we're going to because they find out he's a fan, or at least he's connected to this well-known card game, Spirit Ruse, and basically they want him to invest into a company that's not doing well, but he has to put all his assets forward, and so that when the company ends up not being as valuable as he thought it was, he'd already put everything in it and he'll lose everything. So that was kind of initially the plan. I love how they ended up getting Brianna a job there as a temp, because basically Parker had Lucy watching 3 hours of sexual harassment stuff. She's I don't even get why I'm here. It's because we went through your browsing history, and she's and it's even at one point, I felt so bad for Lucy, because we never got to the end result of it. I guess he just legitimately had to sit there, because even at one part, Parker's yeah, this is the part, focus on this part, personal space and stuff like that. Poor Lucy. It's always that interesting thing too, when it's not just the main guy that's bad, that to a certain extent the right hand is kind of bad too. Carter doesn't suffer necessarily any ramifications. I guess Jim, being in a compromised position he's in, leads to Carter as well. But it's it's a sad thing of right, Jim, as Sophie kind of points out early in the episode, Jim's kind of the cool kid, and Carter was just taken advantage of by him, but it still doesn't justify the fact is that he's the one that basically uses his algorithm to help Jim find the businesses that he swoops up. So it's you still played a role in this guy gouging up, and you're just oh yeah, because I guess in his mind it's they're best buds, but obviously Jim doesn't feel that way. But because even him and Brianna had, even Carter and Brianna had a moment because they were nerding out, because she's oh, did you do this? He's no, I did this. And it's oh, and even Elliot's geek spiral. Brianna, focus. But I love that they set the whole thing up for Harry to take on, pretend to be Springer, the dude who made the game. Even get him looking very George R.R. Martin-esque when they were doing that. But then the real one shows up, played by French Stewart, which I'm like, that actually fits very nicely. I think French Stewart definitely does really good job with that type of character. Like, he's very good at playing it. Like, he is able to kind of bring out a lot of very eccentric, I think eccentric would be the right word. Eccentric kind of oddball characters. Like his character from Psych was kind of a bit of an oddball. So it's just, it's just one of those things that kind of comes to mind. But I was like, oh yeah, that's very befitting. That is kind of the sad thing when it's when they do their job too well, and because they gave him Jim, the idea to buy the company, and that led Carter going above and beyond and actually finding the real Springer and getting him to come in is I'm ready to sell my company, because he's always been more about the arts, but now it's I got to be the business. But he didn't like the very business side of things. He's actually kind of disappeared from the public eye for the past decade or something, or maybe 2 decades. But so it's we kind of screwed up. Now he's actually going to make a lot of money off of this. He's not going to fail like we thought he would, because the whole point was to sell him a fake company, but now he's actually going to get the real company, and so we're actually going to make him a lot more money, and he's just going to be able to double down on what he's done. But once again, none of them were willing to back down because of what he has. Storm Brianna's the one that came up with the idea of how to handle all of this, because basically the reason why he was able to convince Springer to sell the company is I'm pretending to be a bigger fan than I am. He did enjoy the game once upon a time. He's yeah, because even Carter mentions he did partake in a tournament and got second place. Don't mention it because it rubs in the wrong way. It's still kind of a sore spot. And then later on, Brianna throws that in his face of or you can end up getting second place again. And then Jim kind of looks at Carter because he knows the only person that would have dropped that information was him. So it is interesting, because obviously I'm not well versed in the card game playing world. I feel like I referenced that recently, the whole Yu-Gi-Oh thing. What made me think that? Maybe I brought that up in a review recently. Maybe it was one of these. I don't remember. I'm reviewing these over the course of a couple days, so I don't remember. I referenced Yu-Gi-Oh fairly recently because that's the one I always got into the most. To be fair, I'm more into the anime. I've never actually played the actual physical card game. I've just always associated with the anime, which once again, the anime kind of does its own things. It doesn't follow more traditional Yu-Gi-Oh rules in certain regards, but that's a whole tangent within itself. But it just kind of reminded me of that, because obviously but obviously it's there's a cosplay element. It was very I guess the world and nature of it is very, because they did have Harry dress up very George R.R. Martin-esque, so there is that medieval feel to it as well. I love that Elliot was super against it. No, I'm not going to dress up. Because for him, he's there's a whole bunch. This place is literally filled with nothing but Hardisons. It's because that's the thing, too. And I think that's actually kind of sweet. I brought it up how, last episode, how nerdy Brianna is about, how dorky she is about Halloween. And it's interesting to see, right, she shares, they're siblings, so it makes sense that, he's an older sibling, so it's, probably a lot of his interests ended up rubbing off on her. So, I don't know. She hasn't shown to have all the same interests that Hardison does. We don't really know what she's into. If she's into Star Trek and stuff like that, because obviously all the movie references and mainly Star Trek references he made in the original show. Who knows if that's kind of her jam? We know it's Parker's to an extent because hell, she spoke Klingon, so there's something there. But we don't know if Brianna shares that, because obviously she has her own little niche of stuff that she's into, and that's this particular game. And I love that she's trying to pretend I enjoyed it when I was a kid, because I guess she's still trying, because she does look up to Parker, so she's trying to be no, but I'm not that kid anymore. I'm an adult. I'm cool, because I think in her mind, Parker's one of the coolest people she knows, so she's trying to put on that front, because Parker's no, I'll find the vault where the card is, the Queen Zeal card is, so you just do the game stuff, I'll do the Parker stuff. But Brianna's actually the one who ended up figuring everything out, because she's the one that knows the lore to this game so well, and she's the one that ended up pointing out some clues. because Parker at first is kind of the reason why she was so like reluctant with the whole Brianna thing was because first, like, I'm supposed to be the mentor. Like, what does that make me, like, if she's the one that ends up teaching me? And for Harry, it's like a good mentor. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, she just wants to impress you. She wants you to see how amazing she is, you know? And it's like, you know, Harry's coming at this because from the perspective of like, hey, he's got a daughter, which I would assume we're going to meet her within the next 2 episodes or something like that, just because she's come up in conversation and she's a key part of his life. So we'll have to wait and see whether that ends up being the case. But while they're looking for the card, you have Sophie and Elliot dressing up, keeping Springer occupied. I love the whole like jousting thing, which turned into a real match. And I love that Elliot did his thing of like, right, dropped the sword, went to, you know, his fisticuffs, and even that badass like swinging, like spinning of the blade like that, and then like stabbing it to the ground like hero posing like that. I'm like, that's super badass. I love that. But what I also thought was interesting is when like Sophie is trying to keep him preoccupied and she's doing a speech, and I'm like, oh, she's kind of terrible. I'm like, that's interesting because as we know, Sophie's thing is she's typically a terrible actress unless it's part of the con, because when it's part of the con, you know, that's when her grifter skills kick in and she becomes like one of the best actresses ever. So like she was kind of stumbling through this. I was like, but it's part of the con, but it's like, right, it's not something she knows firsthand because she's reading the letter, but it's not until she really got into it and I guess really understanding, like, I think because it was just she was reading it and not realizing it was part of the, like, I guess it's like, right, it's just like I'm trying to distract him. It's not necessarily part of the con, but then it's like, right, these are keys to figuring out these are clues to figure out where to find the card. And I think that's when you see the shift in her performance and everything and how she's delivering it. And I love the parallels of like, while she's saying it, like, obviously Harry, in particular Parker, is figuring it out and she's the one that ends up revealing the path to the safe. But Jim had already gotten to it. Obviously, he's cheating his way through the tournament because, I thought Carter was actually telling him, like, oh, you do this, you play this. It's like, no, Carter's actually just running an algorithm to tell him how to play everything. So it's like, right, this algorithm found the card. It helped you find all these businesses. So, like, trusting this algorithm because it's saying, like, there's an 80% chance that Brianna's only going to do this particular move. But Brianna was able to kind of get him back by hacking into the camera. He's like, wait, you're cheating. The only way you'd be able to play that card is if you knew I had this card. And she's like, what? How am I cheating? Oh, you're saying I'm seeing reflection of glasses? Like, the only way that would happen is if, you know, you had a camera in your glasses or something. There was the situation of, yeah, Jim had the card, but they ended up finding all the other stuff in the safe, so they were able to find all the stuff like, right, you might not be going to jail, but you're going to be losing out on a lot of money because here's all that research papers and stuff like that on the cures, and we gave it to all your competitors, so they're going to be making the cures for the illness that like Jenna and others have, and the fact is that you're going to go away for fraud. But it's like, right, I might not have the money, I might have, you know, but I'm still going to get this company at the end of the day. Because it's like, right, you know, Springer is a man of his word, so he's going to hand over the card. But then you have Brianna talking to him, like, it's like, right, like, you can't forget why you started this game. Like, look at all these people. It isn't just a business. There is an art to it, like a whole community. A whole bunch of people around the world gathered because of your game. Like, obviously the cosplay and everything, and even this card tournament. It's like, it's so important to a lot of people. Even Brianna saying, like, it's very important to her. It made her feel like it was okay because of the way she, like, the way her mind works and the way she is, and even who she loves. And I think that makes her fit even more amongst this group, because this group is a group of misfits themselves. But I think in particular, Parker's like that. Like, that's why they have even more common ground, because Parker was an oddball. Granted, her circumstances of growing up were not the same, but it's like, she's an oddball of a person, like she even was as a kid, like, you know, so I think that's where she can, like, her and Brianna connect, where it's like, right, I get what it's like to be a misfit, to kind of be an oddball, to feel like you don't belong, because, like, Parker's not like every other person either, so, and I think that, you know, you almost, I don't know if she actually was crying hearing Brianna's speech, but it did seem like she was teary-eyed. I feel like you saw some tears kind of roll down her face, but it's like, And once again, like, if you compare that to Parker from, like, the beginning of the series, you never would have thought that. Like, she's gotten more in touch with her emotions, but also, like, she's gotten to the point she opens up more. Because even to the point, like, it's like, right, we're in the process of finding things, but thanks, Brianna, we wouldn't have been able to find this without you. So it's like, you know, kind of loosening up a little bit, like, you know, and Brianna kind of felt happy being like, oh, Parker thanked me. Like, I'm doing a good job, you know? So I just thought that was all fascinating. There was also this line I thought was so interesting, like as Harry and Parker were looking into the clues, Harry is like, I hate riddles. I'm like, is that supposed to be like an inside joke? Like, is that supposed to be a wink and nod? Because it's like you get Harry, played by Noah Wyle, to say that line, and obviously, like, you know, I brought up before his connection to, like, the Librarian movies as well as the TV show. So I'm like, was that supposed to be like a wink and nod to that to some extent? Or, I don't know. Like, it just seemed like, for Harry specifically to say that line, that's just, I don't know if I was thinking or reading too much into that. But at the end of the day, Jim doesn't get the company. He chooses, Springer decided not to sell him the company. And it's like, you're supposed to be good, you're supposed to be a man of your word. He's like, well, I guess I'm just not good at that. And he ends up giving Brianna the Zeal card. I was like, oh, like, she obviously loves this game, so, like, she's going to cherish it. She's not going to sell it or anything. So that's pretty dope that she got something out of this and was able to stop a very bad dude from continuing to do what he do, because he was trying to give her that speech of like right, because Brianna, like, playing the game through the tournament, like, she wasn't as vicious with some of her moves, and he was like, you could have beat that guy in 3 moves, but in 3 moves ago, but you didn't, like, obliterate him. It's like, right, it's kind of, you kill whoever you have to kill, like, that's the only way you advance in this world. And she's like, right, kind of, she basically insinuated, like, right, you would know about that killing kids or something like that, wouldn't you? That he is, I mean, because even Harry said it early in the episode, he's a vulture. He even self-proclaims himself and takes pride in being a vulture, which is kind of sad. Once again, he doesn't go to jail, but at least his businesses and everything are suffering. And the company in particular is going to pay for, like, all of Jenna as well as other kids' bills who are taking the medicine, just because they're just happy not to get sued, so they're going to do their part and everything. So everything kind of has a happy ending, you know? So, and I thought it was really sweet that, you know, while, you know, talking to Michael, like, you know, Sophie had adjusted her ring because it made her think about Nate, because, like, I think, you know, it's like, he's like, how could I ever repay you? And she's like, helping the kids and everything, like, doing this for you was payment enough, you know? Just thinking about Nate as she, like, you know, touches her ring. So I never commented on it. Actually, looking back, having, once again, I should have brought this up in the first episode. Just a nice continuity detail. It is exactly the same ring. I mean, I would assume, like, it wouldn't be too hard to get the exact ring, but I think it is nice to know continuity-wise. It's like, oh no, it's not a replacement ring. It's like, nope, it's the exact same ring he gives Sophie in the series finale of the original series. So I just thought it was an interesting detail. Like I said, I noticed that from the first episode. I didn't think about to bring it up until just now. So. But like I said, a lot of interesting things. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.